the Spanish church essentially cuts off the power of the temple because the temples are astronomical observatories that are meant to connect to the sun and the night sky and the stars, and they act as like celestial astronomical clocks. They have a purpose, and by building this building on top of it, you cut off the Inca people from their spirituality, from their source, right? And I was going through all of it with her, and by the end of the trip, she's like,
how many people? How deep was the Spanish?
It was only
army?
It was only 150 guys. I'm pretty sure it was only 150 guys. Yeah.
So it never got above that, though.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I think that they came. I imagine that when they came back with the second expedition, it was many more soldiers, plus the help of other indigenous people that now saw that the Aztecs were weakened and wanted them dead too. So this second phase of the war is when we get this period of the Spanish priests giving the Aztec people the blankets that had smallpox in it. You've heard of this, I'm sure.
Tell that story for people.
This is that. Well, I don't know all the details of it. I just know that there were Spanish friars and priests who probably genuinely wanted the betterment. Like, people think that we're talking about biological warfare here.
We want what's best for you.
Take
this smallpox.
It's hard to say, man, because the more I've studied it, back then they have what's the theory of like the four fluids or whatever it was? It was like blood, saliva, pee, something else. They didn't really understand. They didn't really understand virology, germ theory, and so we think, as I've looked more into it, I started off thinking that they knew that they were spreading disease, but I don't think that they did. I think that these priests genuinely cared about the souls of these people and wanted to protect them and comfort them, because there were lots of Spaniards that weren't bad people. There were lots of Spaniards that genuinely cared about the Aztecs or the natives that they're interacting with and wanted the best for them, but ultimately ended up hurting them even more.
You sound like a Spanish apologist.
Yeah, no, I'm just kidding. No, but that's probably really what was happening. Is they really were giving the women and children these blankets to keep them warm during the winter, without realizing that they had brought these blankets from the Caribbean, surrounded by other Europeans that were breathing all over them and putting all their diseases into these blankets, and then those blankets just decimate people in Mexico City. Just bodies, thousands of bodies piling up in the middle of the markets. It was like the Spaniards are walking through the markets and it's just piles of dead Aztecs everywhere. Now, another similar thing happens here is that there's a Spanish friar down in Peru a decade and a half later, and he's baptizing after Pizarro. Pizarro is a colleague of Cortez. I think he's a cousin or nephew of Cortez. Gets sent down on an expedition to conquer Peru. You and I talked about this on my first episode, where Atahualpa like spits on the Bible and throws it on the floor, or throws it on the ground. Yeah. And so there was a Spanish friar there that was trying to baptize the Inca people, and so he had this bowl of holy water. And he had thousands of people putting their face in the bowl of holy water.
Yeah, that's great.
And all he was doing was giving each one of these people, directly giving them the Spanish influenzas and smallpox. And so even though he was the guy trying to save their souls, he himself probably killed more people than any Spaniard ever did.
I'm going to save your soul and send you to God. God damn.
Yeah, man.
What a savage time on every front.
Wild time, man. Wild time. And, I even think about that I used to be, it's funny, like my wife, she's cute. I took her to Peru, and I'm talking to her about, we were going through Cusco, and I'm showing her all the Inca temples with these, Spanish churches built over the top of them. And I'm explaining to her, like, the Spanish church essentially cuts off the power of the temple because the temples are astronomical observatories that are meant to connect to the sun and the night sky and the stars, and they act as like celestial astronomical clocks. They have a purpose, and by building this building on top of it, you cut off the Inca people from their spirituality from their source, right? And I was going through all of it with her, and by the end of the trip, she's like, I don't like the Spanish. You know, she's like, she doesn't like the Spanish at all. And you know, the Inca people are just so nice, but you know, it's just funny. But as a historian, it all eats away at you, and you end up realizing that like no general group of people are ever as bad as they're portrayed to be. There are individual people that are awful, but the vast majority of people are just caught up in this tsunami of civilization, right?
I wish we would take that lesson today even. People define different groups of people around the world. I mean, you draw it along borders, you draw it along religions, you draw it along races. They'll use anecdotal things to define the whole. And it just repeats itself. History repeats itself over and over again. But I never understand that. You know, there's cultures, there's some ideas that are strongly infested in some cultures that you may be like, all right, I don't love that. But judge people on people. You know, when we look at this history, and that's important why you're given this context as well, so that everyone listening understands. Similarly to today, you know, where we have men in suits go in back rooms and shake hands and drop bombs. You know, maybe they didn't wear suits back then. They didn't have fucking, you know, Hugo Boss and all that. But same idea. Just, you know, a few guys decide this is what it is. And then suddenly you send the pawns out there as they would look at them, which is unfair to describe them that way. But that's how they looked at them, to do the dirty work. And, you know, it could be everything from some savage conquering and war to what you're talking about with, you know, priests saying, I'm going to save your soul and spreading massive disease that kills people. It's brutal, man.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's a fascinating time, man. It's two different worlds disconnected by more than 10,000 years from each other. Completely different worldviews. In some ways similar.
What do you mean in some ways similar?
Just the humanity. You know, okay, so we study the ancient Amazonian people, and what's funny is judging by their archaeology, which thus far we haven't found a lot of the archaeology. We've only found smaller civilizations on the periphery of the Amazon. Like, you know, probably the main hubbub of all these great lost cities in the Amazon we hear about were probably further into the center of the Amazon, where Oriana is said to have seen them, where you have like where you actually have stone bedrock instead of clay, out in the west, like where Paul is at.
Paul Rosley.
Yeah, but on the peripheral of the Amazon, where it's much easier to access, we found all kinds of civilizations out there, and the archaeology that comes up is pretty interesting. The only thing that we find are these raised platforms that essentially come up from these canals, and so you have this farmland, you have these raised platforms, you have these dugout canals that go through the ground. And so from what we think is that a lot of these Amazonians on the periphery of the Amazon didn't necessarily walk from place to place all the time. They get in these little canals and little tiny boats and sail up and down from town to town. But all we find is the archaeological remnants of giant parties. This is kind of similar.
On it.
Yeah, this is pretty similar. This is a LiDAR map that's shown up. Now, this is a larger city that's closer into the interior of the Amazon. It sort of gives you an idea, but it isn't exactly what I'm talking about. Maybe you could look up like Amazonian geoglyphs, and you'll probably see a shot. You'll probably see a drone shot from the sky, and that'll be a lot closer. This right here, though, this LiDAR scan, this is like a major city. There's a step pyramid. There's a huge platform in the middle. There's highways coming in.
What's the smaller one over there on the far left that's green? Is that a mini step pyramid?
Yeah, probably a mini step pyramid. So it's got that raised platform, and then it's got a mound up on top of it. So that raised platform, you probably had some normal people setting up their huts, and then those two mounds right next to it, the probably royal people or much more wealthy, important people living up even more elevated.
Okay.
Yeah. So
what do we got on this?
Here we go. Perfect,
that's what you want?
Dude. Yeah,
cool.
Yeah. So any of these. So
that looks like the movie Signs.
It does, right?
Yeah. Deef was like on it. Yeah.
Yeah. So we don't.
Come on, Mel. Where are you?
We don't understand why they make these geoglyphs and why they made these shapes. What the orientations of them are truly meant for.
They were talking
aliens.
Talking up there, baby.
Could be. You ever seen the Nazca lines?
The Nazca mummies.
No, the lines in the ground. Aw, dude. we're gonna have to go down the Nazca.
All
This is
right,
actually,
all right. Finish this point, then we're going
okay,
down
okay.
the Nazca. That's going in the title. Nazca Lion Aliens. Boom. Everyone loves it.
Let's do it. Let's
Cool.
do it. So this is actually similar to the Nazca lines. It's giant geoglyphs that are made into the ground, but essentially people would lived in these raised platforms similar to this, and you can see huge lines spanning off from here, and they're ditches in the ground that be filled with water, and people would sail in little boats from one place to the other. And essentially all that ancient Amazonians did was farm and party and go to war and sleep with each other's wives. That's basically it.
Listen, you got to throw that in there.
Yep.
Swinging
So
older than time.
In many ways, you look at them and they're like, okay, they like to have a good time, they like to kill each other, and they like to have sex. Like,
good for them.
Pretty similar to everyone else around the world.
You take out the killing, we're good.
Yeah, and so that's so much of the Mesoamerican world is so similar to other parts of the world, and yet the way that those pieces interact with each other is just assorted completely differently, right?
Thank you guys for checking out this clip. If you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe and hit the like button on this video. It is a huge help. And if you'd like to check out this clip's full podcast episode, that link is in the description below or right here. And finally, you can follow me on Instagram and X by using the links in my description below.